Our research centre has been working with the National Trust on their public programme, which is called Prejudice and Pride, and researches and reveals LGBTQ stories that exist across their sites across the UK. And one of the sites which has been so central to that is Kingston Lacy here in Dorset.
Kingston Lacy was the home of William John Banks at the start of the 19th century, and he was prosecuted for same-sex acts, or indecent acts as they were called at the time. And if arrested and if found guilty, he could have been executed. So to avoid that, he fled the country. He lived the rest of his life in exile. But whilst in northern Italy, in France, he collected a vast array of art, of furniture, and sent it back to his home with intricate details as to how he wanted it to be displayed. What visitors see when they come to Kingston Lacy today is absolutely the result of William John's vision and the necessity he was faced with to leave the country. So the history of Kingston Lacy is very much tangled up with the history of LGBTQ rights in law.
One of the really unique features, I think, of this project has been the way in which we've brought together a team including a suite of different creatives with different talents to take our research and help us, work with us to translate that research into an experience for visitors that is very effective, that is very powerful, that engages them in a deep emotional way.
Well, these ropes hang in the entrance hall, which is a threshold space, and it's also a reference to the 51 men that we know and we researched who died during the time of William John's life under the laws of the time. Well, it is to do with the physicality of the punishment which was hanging. Obviously we used rope and we used wood as a material reference, but we also knotted, this is a remembrance knot, a double reef knot. The ropes are hung at different heights to represent different ages of the men who died. We've got a 17-year-old to a 71-year-old here. What we wanted to do was to unsettle people and to talk to them emotionally rather than in their heads about what it must have been like to live under these laws and to love people that you weren't meant to love.
The timeline here shows how LGBTQ lives have been affected by the law throughout history, starting from 1533 and the Buggery Act, which was instigated by Henry VIII, right up to today. And we've tried to choose stories that are very well known, but also those that are perhaps more surprising, and both in the UK and abroad. In the Spanish room here at Kingston Lacy, we have an installation called Displaced, and we've incorporated people's real life experiences of homophobia and displacement and being forced to leave home. And the aim of that is to sort of hopefully connect with the visitor to recognise that these issues are still very much a part of society and the world today.
It's very important that the National Trust marks 50 years since the partial decriminalisation of same-sex acts, because it's a big part of our national story. And we knew that the National Trust had never run a programme like this before, so we've had fantastic small displays and exhibitions at some of our places about this history, but never on this sort of scale.
I think this project's really important because the research that I've been carrying out over a number of years reveals the ways in which the stories that we choose to tell publicly in our history and heritage and museum institutions have consequences and effects. So if we don't tell those stories openly and honestly, we reproduce some of that stigma and shame of the past, and people think there's something wrong with being gay. And if we tell those stories much more honestly and truthfully, we can help to tackle some of that stigma, some of that prejudice.